The Vanari Conservancy had ruled the Varath expanse for 9,000 years. 9,000 years of stability, 9,000 years of order, 9,000 years of incremental, measured progress across 1,400 star systems. The Vanari were not conquerors, they were not explorers, they were conservators. Their founding principle was simple: preserve what exists, protect what is fragile, maintain what works. They had built a civilization that reflected that principle. Stable, enduring, resistant to change, both internal and external. Their technology advanced slowly, deliberately. Each innovation was tested for generations before it was adopted. Their government was a council of elders, each one having served for no fewer than 300 years. Their military was defensive by doctrine, fortified systems, shielded worlds. Static defense networks designed to make any invasion too costly to attempt. No one had tried to invade the Varath expanse in 6,000 years. The Vanari had not fought a war in 4,000. They believed this proved their system worked. Their caution was justified, their patience was rewarded, their way of life was correct. They were wrong. The attack came without warning, without negotiation, without declaration. The first indication the Vanari had that something was wrong was when the outer defense grid of the Keller system went silent. All 47 orbital platforms, simultaneously, no alarm, no distress signal, just silence. The Vanari Council dispatched an investigation fleet, 12 warships, standard response protocol for a grid malfunction. The fleet arrived at the Keller system and found the platforms intact, undamaged, still powered, but empty. Every Vanari soldier assigned to the grid had vanished. 14,000 personnel, gone, no bodies, no signs of struggle, no evidence of transporter activity or weapon discharge. The platforms were operational but uncrewed. The fleet reported this anomaly. The council debated for 11 days. On the 12th day, the defense grid of the adjacent Valdez system went silent. Same pattern, no warning, no signal, no bodies. Then the Torani system, then the Pelera system, then the Methvin system, system after system, grid after grid, falling silent, one every 3 to 4 days, each one deeper in Vanari territory, each one closer to the core worlds. The council stopped debating and started panicking. Admiral Krenveth had not commanded a combat operation in her entire 340-year career. No Vanari admiral had. The Vanari military had not conducted a combat operation in 4,000 years. It had conducted drills, exercises, simulations. But actual combat against an actual enemy was something that existed only in historical archives. Krenveth was the most senior military officer in the Conservancy. She had earned her position through decades of administrative excellence. She understood logistics, supply chains, personnel management, maintenance schedules. She understood everything about the Vanari military except how to use it. Now she stood on the bridge of the flagship Resolute and watched another defense grid go dark on the tactical display. "That is the 37th system," her tactical officer said. His name was Commander Tornau, young, only 120 years old. But he was the best analyst the fleet had, and Krenveth had learned to trust his assessments even when she did not want to hear them. 37 systems, Krenveth repeated. Over 120,000 personnel vanished. "Yes, Admiral. And we still have no contact with whatever is doing this." "No, Admiral, we have detected no vessels, no energy signatures, no weapon discharges, no communications. The enemy is completely invisible to our sensors." Krenveth studied the tactical display. The Varath expanse spread across the screen like a web of light. 1,400 star systems connected by trade routes and supply lines. The dead systems were marked in red, 37 red marks, scattered in a pattern that Tornau had been trying to analyze for weeks. "Commander, your assessment of the pattern." Tornal pulled up his analysis. A line ran through the red marks, not straight, not random, curving, spiraling inward. The enemy is moving toward the core, Admiral, not along our trade routes, not along our supply lines, directly toward the core systems, as if they know exactly where our seat of government is. They know our territories. Yes, Admiral, they know our territory better than we know theirs, because we know nothing about them. Krenveth turned from the display. What are our options? Tornal hesitated. He was young enough to still feel the weight of speaking plainly to a 300-year-old admiral. We can consolidate our forces around the core worlds, concentrate our defensive fleets, make a stand. Oh, you do not recommend this. I do not, cons. And trading our forces leaves the outer systems defenseless. The enemy will continue eliminating our grid nodes. We will lose our early warning capability, and when they reach the core, we will be trapped. What do you recommend? Tornal took a breath. We send a distress call to every civilization within range. We ask for help. Krenveth felt the bridge go quiet. A Venari distress call. The concept was almost unthinkable. The Conservancy had never asked for outside assistance, not once in 9,000 years. To do so would be to admit that the Venari could not solve their own problems, that their system was not perfect, that their way of life was not sufficient. The Council will never approve it, Krenveth said. The Council is on the 7th system in the enemy's path. They have approximately 40 days before the enemy reaches them. I suspect they will become more flexible as the deadline approaches. Krenveth looked at the spiraling red line on the display. It was getting closer to the center. Faster now. The interval between grid failures had shortened from 4 days to 3. Soon it would be 2, then 1. Draft the message, she said. I will present it to the Council myself. The Venari distress call was transmitted on every frequency the Conservancy could generate. It was not a short message. The Venari did not do short messages. It was a comprehensive briefing, 3 hours of data, the history of the grid failures, the pattern analysis, the enemy's invisible approach, the vanishing personnel, the lack of any contact or communication. Everything the Venari knew broadcast into the void in every language they had recorded. The signal was powerful. The Venari had invested heavily in communication technology over their 9,000 years of stability. Their broadcast arrays could reach across 5,000 light-years. The signal washed over every star system within that radius. Hundreds of civilizations, thousands of worlds, trillions of individuals. The Venari waited for a response. Weeks passed. No responses. The Venari expanded their broadcast. They redirected power from civilian infrastructure to boost the signal. They transmitted on repeat, hour after hour, day after day. The distress call echoed across the Verath expanse and beyond. No responses. Krenveth tracked the signal propagation on her display. It reached the Torathi Consortium at week 3, no response. It reached the Meridian Free States at week 5, no response. It reached the Kilthari Biosphere Collective at week 7, no response. It reached the Sorani Imperium at week 9, no response. Civilization after civilization. Hundreds of them, all within range, all receiving the call, none answering. Krenveth requested that the Council send diplomatic inquiries through formal channels. Direct messages to specific governments. Polite, professional, requesting any available intelligence on the unknown enemy, offering trade concessions in exchange for assistance. The Torathi Consortium responded with a polite refusal. They were experiencing internal trade disputes and could not spare resources. The Meridian Free States responded with a polite acknowledgement. They noted the distress call and wished the Venari well. The Kilthari Collective responded with a polite statement. They observed that the Vanari had not joined the collective's mutual defense pact and therefore could not expect collective assistance. The Sorani Imperium did not respond at all. Krenveth read the replies one by one. Each one was courteous. Each one was final. Each one said the same thing in different words. Your problem is not our problems. She understood. The Vanari had spent 9,000 years keeping to themselves, refusing alliances, rejecting mutual defense pacts, maintaining strict neutrality in every interstellar dispute. They had believed that their defensive strength was sufficient, that their isolation was a shield, that they owed nothing to the galaxy and the galaxy owed nothing to them. Now the galaxy was returning the favor. Month 6, the 49th system fell. The enemy was 3 weeks from the core. Month 8, the 63rd system fell. The enemy was 10 days from the core. Krenveth stood before the council and delivered the report. The elders listened in silence. Their ancient faces showed nothing, but Krenveth could see it in their postures, the slight tremor in Councillor Bertrand's hands, the rigid stillness of Councillor Kelmoth's spine, the way Councillor Dorven kept closing her eyes for too long. They were afraid. The distress call has reached every civilization within 5,000 light years, Krenveth said. No assistance has been offered, no intelligence has been shared, no acknowledgement of our plight has been made beyond formal courtesy. We are alone. The council chamber was silent. I recommend that we begin evacuation of the core worlds. All non-essential personnel shoo. LD be transported to the outer systems. The military will make a stand here at the core to buy time for the evacuation. Councillor Bertrand spoke. His voice was thin, old. Evacuation to where, Admiral? The outer systems are falling. There is nowhere to go. Then we go beyond the expanse. We leave Vanari territory entirely. We seek refuge with. With who? Bertrand interrupted. No one will take us. We have no allies. We have no friends. We have nothing to offer that would compel another civilization to risk whatever is destroying us. Krenveth had no answer for that. The council debated for 3 days. On the 3rd day, the 71st system fell. The enemy was 4 days from the core. The council voted to transmit the distress call again, at maximum power, on repeat, continuously, until the power failed or they did. It was not a strategy, it was a prayer. Year 12 of the crisis. The Vanari Conservancy no longer existed as a functional government. The core worlds had fallen in year 4. The council had evacuated to the outer systems, then to the fringe systems, then to a single fortified station on the edge of the expanse. From that station, they continued to broadcast the distress call, every day, every hour, for 12 years. The enemy had taken over 900 systems. The Vanari military, which had never been designed for offensive operations, had been unable to stop them. Every engagement followed the same pattern. Vanari ships would detect nothing, then their systems would fail, then their crews would vanish, then the ships would drift empty, powered, but uncrewed. The Vanari had captured fragments of the enemy's technology, disabled defense platforms that had been stripped of crews but not dismantled. Analysis revealed microscopic devices embedded in the platform systems. Not weapons, not hacking tools, something far more sophisticated. Molecular displacement nodes, devices that could disassemble matter at the atomic level and reassemble it elsewhere. The Vanari crews had not been killed, they had been taken, transported, collected. By what, to where, for what purpose? The Vanari could not answer any of these questions. They only knew that their people were being removed, systematically, efficiently, without resistance. Admiral Krenveth, now 412 years old and showing every day of it, stood on the bridge of the last surviving Vanari warship. The Resolute, it was the only capital ship left. The rest had been lost or abandoned over 12 years of futile resistance. Around the Resolute, a small fleet of civilian vessels huddled, 213 ships, refugees, the last survivors of a civilization that had once numbered 1,400 star systems and 2 trillion individuals. 213 ships, approximately 4 million people. All that remained of the Venari Conservancy. Admiral Commander Tornall said he was 160 now, gray, worn, but still sharp, still the best analyst she had. The distress call continues to transmit. Power reserves are at 11%. We have approximately 6 weeks of broadcast time remaining. 6 weeks, 12 years of calling, 6 weeks left. Has anyone responded? Crenveth asked. She asked every day. The answer was always the same. No, admirals. Continue transmitting. Yes, Admiral. Crenveth walked to the viewport. Outside, the stars burned with their usual indifference. Somewhere out there, hundreds of civilizations were going about their business, trading, building, living, ignoring the Venari call because the Venari had never been part of their community, because the Venari had chosen isolation, because isolation meant no one came when you needed help. She had learned the lesson too late. The Venari had been wrong, not about caution, not about preservation, about connection. They had believed that strength was self-sufficiency, that independence was security, that asking for help was weakness. It was not weakness. It was the only thing that might have saved them. And now it was too late. Year 53 of the crisis. Admiral Crenveth was dead. She had died in year 31 peacefully in her sleep. Commander Tornall had assumed command. He was now 201 years old, the oldest Venari alive, the last member of the original military command structure. The refugee fleet had changed over the decades. Ships had been lost to system failures, to resource shortages, to the slow attrition of a population that had no home, no future, and no hope. The fleet now numbered 61 vessels, approximately 800,000 people. 800,000 from 2 trillion. The distress call still transmitted. It should not have been possible. The original power reserves had run out in year 12. But Tornall had devised a solution. A chain of micro-transmitters, each one powered by a tiny solar sail deployed in a relay. Network that bounced the signal from ship to ship and out into the void. The signal was weak, fractured, a ghost of its original strength, but it persisted. Tornall persisted. Every day he checked the relay network. Every day he confirmed the signal was transmitting. Every day he asked if anyone had responded. Every day the answer was no. The enemy had not followed the refugee fleet. This puzzled Tornall. The enemy had systematically consumed the Verath expanse, every system, every installation, every trace of Venari civilization, but they had not pursued the fleeing survivors. They had taken the territory and stopped, as if the people were not the objective, as if the real goal was the infrastructure, the systems, the platforms, the technology. Tornall had spent decades analyzing this pattern. His conclusion, which he could not prove, was that the enemy was not a civilization. It was a process, an automated system designed to acquire technology and resources. The Venari people had been taken not because they were targets, but because they were in the way. Obstacles to be removed so the process could continue. If he was right, the enemy would eventually expand beyond the Verath expanse, into neighboring territories, into the Torathi Consortium, the Meridian Free States, the Kulthari Collective, the Sorani Imperium. The civilizations that had ignored the Venari distress call would eventually face the same enemy. Tornall had transmitted this analysis as part of the distress call, updated it regularly, included the data on the molecular displacement nodes, the enemy's operational patterns, everything the Venari had learned in 53 years of being consumed. No one responded. Year 100, the fleet numbered 34 vessels, 312,000 people. Year 150, 19 vessels, 140,000 people. Year 200, 11 vessels, 62,000 people. Tornal was 351 years old. His body was failing, his vision was dim, his limbs trembled, but his mind remained clear. He sat on the bridge of the Resolute, surrounded by a crew of 17, and monitored the relay network. The signal transmitted, weak, fractured, persistent. "Commander," said Lieutenant Vieras, the youngest member of the crew, only 40 years old, born on a refugee ship, had never set foot on a planet. "Relay Node 7 is failing. I can reroute, but signal strength will drop another 3%. "Reroute," Tornal said. Vieras worked the console, the signal adjusted, weaker but still there. "Commander, at this rate, the relay network will fail within 6 months. We will lose transmission capability entirely." Tornal nodded. 6 months, 200 years of calling, 6 months left. "Commander," Vieras said carefully, "may I ask you something?" "Oh, ask." "Why do you keep transmitting? No one has responded in 200 years. No one is coming. The signal is barely detectable beyond our own fleet. Who are we calling?" The Tornal was quiet for a long time. "Everyone," he said. "Anyone. I keep transmitting because the moment we stop, we are accepting that we deserve to die alone. We do not, no species does. The call is not just a request for help. It is a statement of existence. We are here. We are alive. We matter. Even if no one listens, the call says that we refuse to be silent." Vieras said nothing. "Maintain the signal," Tornal said, "until the last node fails, until the last watt of power is gone, until there is nothing left of the Vanari but a voice in the dark." "Oh yes, Commander." Year 203, Month 7, Day 14. The relay network had 17 nodes remaining. Signal strength was 4% of original. The transmission range had shrunk from 5,000 light-years to approximately 400, a whisper in a void that had been deafened by 2 centuries of silence. Tornal was 354 years old. He could no longer stand. He sat in a support chair on the bridge of the Resolute. His eyes could no longer read direct console output. Vieras read everything to him. "Commander, Relay Node 3 has failed. Rerouting through Node 12. Signal strength now at 3.7%. A transmission range. Approximately 380 light-years, Commander." 380 light-years. In a galaxy that spanned 100,000. The Vanari voice had shrunk to a murmur in a single small corner of a single small region. "Continue transmitting," Tornal said. "Commander, I need to tell you something. I detected an anomaly 17 minutes ago. I did not report it immediately because I wanted to confirm." The Tornal turned his head. "What anomaly?" "A signal incoming on the same frequency as our distress call. It is faint, very faint, but it is there, and it is not ours." The Tornal felt something move in his chest, something he I had not felt in decades. "Unsores." Unable to determine, the signal is too weak for precise directional analysis, but it is coming from outside our fleet, from a point in space approximately, Vieras checked his instruments, approximately 200 light-years away, and moving. "Moving toward us." "Yes, Commander, moving toward us fast." Tornal gripped the arms of his chair. "Can you read the signal content?" Vieras worked for several minutes. The bridge was silent except for the hum of the Resolute's aging systems. "Commander, the signal is a response. It is formatted as a reply to our distress call. It contains—" Vieras stopped. His hands froze over the console. "What does it contain?" "It contains our distress call, Commander, the full message, all 3 hours of it." The sender has received it, analyzed it, and is transmitting it back to us as confirmation, along with a single additional message. I'll read it. Vira's voice was shaking. The message reads, "We heard you, we are coming, hold on." Tornal closed his eyes. 200 years. 200 years of calling, 200 years of silence, 200 years of watching his people shrink from 2 trillion to 62,000, 200 years of transmitting a signal that no one answered. And now someone had answered. Who? He whispered. The signal does not identify the sender, but there is a data attachment, a file. I am decoding it now. Vira's worked, Tornal waited. The bridge crew of 17 had stopped working. They were all watching Vira's, all holding their breath. The file is an image, Commander, a visual spectrum capture. On display it. The main screen activated, an image appeared. A ship. Not a Venari design, not any design Tornal recognized. The vessel was angular, dark gray, functional, no ornamentation, no markings that he could identify, but it was large. The image showed it against a background of stars, and its silhouette dwarfed them. A rough estimate suggested a length of at least 15 kilometers. 15 kilometers. The largest Venari warship had been 4. What is the source of this image? Tornal asked. The attachment metadata indicates it was taken by the sender's own external sensors. It is a self-portrait, Commander. This is the ship that is coming. Tornal studied the image. The design was unfamiliar. The technology was unfamiliar. But the message was not unfamiliar. We heard you, we are coming, hold on. A simple, direct human. Tornal did not know what human meant. He did not recognize the species. But the message was clear, and the signal was real, and something was moving toward his fleet at a speed that defied his instrument's ability to track. Time to intercept, he asked. Based on current velocity and closing rate, approximately 31 hours, Commander. 31 hours after 200 years, 31 hours. Maintain the signal, Tornal said. Let them find us. The ship arrived in 29 hours. It dropped out of transit less than 1,000 kilometers from the Resolute. No warning, no deceleration signature. One moment, empty space. The next moment, a 15-kilometer vessel filling the viewport like a wall of dark metal. The Resolute's bridge crew stared. The ship was not just large. It was ancient, not in the sense of being decrepit, in the sense of bearing the marks of age. Scars, repairs, patches, layers of armor that had been added over what looked like centuries of service. This was not a new vessel. This was a ship that had been maintained, upgraded, and kept flying for a very long time. A communication channel opened, audio only. This is the vessel continuity, human ship. We are responding to the Venari distress call. Please confirm you are the transmitting party. The voice was calm, measured, a single speaker, no background noise, no bridge ambience, just the voice clear and unhurried. Vira's responded, his voice cracked with emotion. This is the Venari vessel Resolute. We are the transmitting party. We have been transmitting for 203 years. A pause on the channel. 203 years, the voice repeated. Not shocked, not sympathetic, just confirming. We received your signal 197 years ago. We have been traveling to your location since then. 197 years. The signal had reached them 197 years ago, and they had come, immediately, without hesitation. They had simply pointed their ship at the Venari signal and traveled for almost 2 centuries to reach it. You received our call in year 6, Tornal said. His old voice was barely above a whisper. Everyone else received it too, no one else came. No, the voice agreed, no one else came. Why did you? Another pause, longer this time. Well, because you asked. Tornal waited for more. There was no more. The answer was complete because you asked, as if thought. T was reason enough. As if 200 years of travel was a reasonable response to a request from a stranger. I do not understand, Tornal said. Commander, I understand you have questions. I have answers. But first, I need to assess your fleet's condition and provide immediate assistance. How many survivors? 62,000 across 11 vessels. A medical emergencies. 1,700. Malnutrition, radiation exposure, systemic organ failure from prolonged life support dependency. We have medical facilities. We can accommodate all of them. I am transmitting docking coordinates now. Begin evacuation of your most critical cases immediately. Vera's moved to comply, but Tornal raised a hand. Wait, you said you have been traveling for 197 years. In a single ship. Oh yes. A single ship came to help a civilization that spanned 1,400 star systems. Your civilization spanned 1,400 star systems 200 years ago, Commander. Based on our analysis of your distress call, we estimated you would have a significantly reduced footprint by the time we arrived. We prepared for the scenario we expected to find, not the one you started with. You prepared for 200 years. Oh yes. What did you prepare? The channel was silent for a moment. When the voice returned, it carried a different quality. Not defensive, not boastful, just factual. Commander, the continuity is not a standard vessel. It is a generational ship. It carries a crew of 14,000. It has its own agricultural systems, manufacturing capabilities, medical infrastructure, educational facilities. It is designed to operate independently for indefinite periods. We brought it because we did not know what we would find when we arrived. We prepared for the possibility that your entire surviving population would need to be accommodated. Tornal looked at the image of the ship on the viewport. 15 kilometers, 14,000 crew, self-sustaining. They had built a mobile world and pointed it at a distress call from a species they had never met. Who are you? Tornal asked. We are humans from the Sol system. We are a single ship from a species that has been spacefaring for approximately 400 years. We are not a major power. We are not a military force. We are 14,000 people on a ship that was built for exactly this kind of mission. Oh, exactly this kind of mission. Humans have a concept, old, from before we were spacefaring. We call it a lighthouse keeper, someone who maintains a light so that others can find their way. The continuity is a lighthouse keeper. We patrol the deep spaces between civilizations. We listen for distress calls, and when we hear one, we go. You have done this before. Oh yes. How many times? This is the 43rd distress response the continuity has conducted in its operational lifetime. 43 times this ship had heard a call and gone. 43 times it had traveled across the void to reach someone who needed help. 43 times it had arrived, sometimes too late, sometimes just in time, always without being asked by anyone except the caller. And the other 42, Tornal asked, were they also unanswered by everyone else? The channel was quiet for a long time. 31 of them were, the voice said, 31 species that called for help and received no response from their neighbors. We reached 19 in time. 12 we were too late. We documented what happened to them so that someone would remember they existed. Tornal felt something break inside him, not grief. He had passed through grief decades ago, something else, recognition. The understanding that the universe was not what he had thought it was, that the Vanari had not been uniquely abandoned, that the galaxy was full of voices crying out in the dark and almost no one listening. Except one ship. One species. 14,000 people on a 15-kilometer vessel that had been traveling for almost 2 centuries, to reach a call that no one else had answered. "Begin your evacuation, Commander," the voice said. "We will discuss everything else after your people are safe." Tornal nodded. He could not speak. He turned to Viras and gestured. Viras transmitted the docking coordinates to the refugee fleet. One by one, the 11 Venari vessels approached the continuity. Docking ports opened along the human ship's flank, large enough to accommodate vessels many times the size of the Venari refugees. The human ship had been built to receive ships, to take in survivors, to process them, feed them, heal them. Because this was what the continuity did. This was what humans did. The evacuation took 3 days. 62,000 Venari transferred from 11 dying ships into the continuity. The human ship's interior was vast, corridors wide enough for ground vehicles, hangar bays that could haul warships, medical wards that stretched for hundreds of meters, agricultural bays filled with growing plants under artificial light, living quarters designed to be adaptable to different species' environmental needs. The Venari were not the first non-human species the continuity had accommodated. The evidence was everywhere. Environmental settings labeled in languages Tornal did not recognize. Medical equipment calibrated for body types that were not human and not Venari. Common areas with furniture designed for anatomies that ranged from the familiar to the bizarre. This ship had hosted many species, many survivors, many tragedies. Tornal was carried through the corridors on a medical transport. His body was failing. He knew he did not have long, but he had asked to see the ship before he died, and the humans had accommodated him. His guide was a human woman, young by Venari standards, perhaps 40 years old. Brown skin, dark hair, calm eyes. She walked beside his transport and answered his questions without hesitation. "How long has the continuity been operational?" Tornal asked. 219 years. 219 years, and it has responded to 43 distress calls in that time. "Oh yes. How did you receive our signal in year 6? Our broadcast range was 5,000 light-years at that point. Your ship must have been within that range." We were on patrol in the region between the Verath Expanse and the Torathi Consortium when we detected your signal. You patrol the space between civilizations. Yes, that is our function. We monitor the gaps, the empty regions where no one is watching, because that is where distress signals go unanswered. The major civilizations monitor their own territory, but the space between territories is invisible. No one is listening there except us. Tornal looked at the corridor walls. They were scarred, repaired, patched, evidence of 2 centuries of operation. "How many ships like the continuity are there?" The woman paused. "Currently operational, 7. There have been 11 over the years. 4 were lost, 3 to accidents, 1 to a hostile encounter. The 7th, the Resolute Hope, is currently responding to a distress call from the Sorani Imperium." Tornal stared at her. "The Sorani Imperium is calling for help." "Yes, the same enemy that consumed your expanse has entered Sorani territory. They transmitted a distress call 6 months ago. The Resolute Hope is en route." "The Sorani ignored our call 200 years ago. They told us our problem was not their problem." The woman did not react to this. "Yes, they did. And now you are going to help them." "Oh yes. After they refused to help us." "Oh yes." Tornal did not understand. He knew he did not have the framework to understand. The Venari way of thinking was transactional, cautious, calculated. You helped those who could help you. You invested in relationships that yielded returns. You did not spend 200 years traveling to save a species that could offer you nothing. But the humans did. Why, he asked, the same question he had asked on the bridge, the same question that had no answer he could grasp. The woman stopped walking. She looked down at Tornal. Her calm eyes held something that he had not seen in any other species during 200 years of abandonment. Commander, when your distress call reached us 197 years ago, our captain at the time made a decision. She did not calculate the strategic value of responding. She did not assess whether the Vanari could repay the effort. She did not consider the political implications. She heard a species asking for help and she decided to go. That is all. That is the entire reason. That is not a reason, that is an impulse. It is both. Humans have a word for it: empathy, the ability to feel what another being feels, to hear a cry for help and feel it as if it were your own. Our captain felt your call, Commander, not as data, not as a signal, as a cry from 2 trillion people who were being erased, and she could not unhear it. The Tornal was silent. We know that most species do not operate this way, the woman continued. We know that the galaxy is full of civilizations that calculate and weigh and balance. We know that the Vanari themselves operated that way for 9,000 years. We do not judge that. It is a valid way to exist, but it is not our way. Your way cost you 200 years of travel. Oh yes. And it cost you 4 ships lost. Oh yes. It cost you resources and lives and time that you will never get back. Oh yes. And it was worth it. The woman looked at him. Ask your people, Commander. Ask the 62,000 Vanari who are alive right now because a ship they had never heard of decided to come. Ask them if it was worth it. The Tornal could not argue with that. He could not argue with any of it. 3 weeks after the evacuation, Tornal sat in the Continuity's medical ward and reviewed the human intelligence files on the enemy. The humans had been monitoring the Verath expanse since they received the distress call. For 197 years, they had watched the Vanari Conservancy shrink. They had recorded every system failure, every disappearance, every pattern shift. They had built a comprehensive database on the enemy's behavior, capabilities, and limitations. More data than the Vanari had gathered in 200 years of direct contact. Because the humans had been watching from outside, from a distance, with sensors that the enemy could not detect, the Continuity was a lighthouse keeper. It was also a ghost, invisible to every known tracking system. The humans had developed stealth technology that made their ship unobservable. They had watched the enemy consume the expanse without the enemy knowing they were there. And in those 197 years of observation, the humans had learned something critical. The enemy had a weakness. The molecular displacement nodes that the Vanari had analyzed were the key. They required a centralized coordination signal to function, a quantum-linked command structure that connected every node to a single source. Destroy the source, and every node in the network would deactivate. Every captured Vanari citizen would be released. Every stolen system would become accessible again. The source was located at the center of the Verath expanse, in the Vanari core system, on the Vanari homeworld itself. The enemy had built its command node on the bones of the Vanari capital. You knew this, Tornal said to the woman. You knew for how long? 73 years, she said. We identified the command source 73 years ago. We have spent that time developing a weapon capable of destroying it. And you did not tell us. You had no functioning communication system that we could use to reach you without revealing our presence to the enemy. And revealing our presence would have compromised the mission. What mission? The mission to destroy the command source and free your people. Tornal stared at her. You came here to rescue the survivors, but you also came here to defeat the enemy. We came here to do both. The rescue was immediate. The defeat required preparation. We have been preparing for 73 years. The weapon is ready. One ship against an enemy that consumed 1,400 star systems. Not one ship, one weapon, delivered by one ship. The continuity was not built to fight fleets. It was built to reach places that no one else could reach, to observe what no one else could observe, and to act when no one else would act. Tornal leaned back in his bed. His body was dying. He could feel it shutting down. Organ by organ, system by system. The Vanari medical officers on the continuity had told him he had days, perhaps hours. "Will it work?" he asked. "We believe so. The weapon targets the quantum link that connects the displacement nodes. It does not destroy matter, it severs connection. Every node in the network will deactivate simultaneously. Every captured Vanari will be released. Every system the enemy has taken will become accessible." And the enemy itself. The enemy is not a species. It is a system, an automated process. Without the command node, the process stops. The individual collection units will become inert. They are not alive. They will simply cease to function. Tornal closed his eyes. 200 years of running, of hiding, of calling into the dark. And the entire time the solution had been traveling toward him. A single ship, a single weapon, a single species that had heard a cry and decided to answer. "A commander," the woman said softly, "is there anything else you need?" Tornal opened his eyes. The Vanari who were taken, the 2 trillion, are they still alive? The molecular displacement nodes preserve biological matter in stasis. Based on our analysis, yes, they are alive, inert, unconscious, but alive. If the weapon works, they will be released. 2 trillion people preserved for 200 years, waiting. "Tell your captain to use the weapon," Tornal said. "Do not wait, do not prepare further, use it now, today." The weapon requires proximity to the command source. We need to travel to the core system. That will take. "Then goes now." The woman looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. "I will relay your request to the captains." Oh, she left. Tornal lay in the medical bed and listened to the sounds of the continuity around him. Human voices, Vanari voices. The hum of systems that had been running for 219 years, a ship that had been built to answer calls. That had answered 43 of them. That was about to answer the 44th. Well, he closed his eyes. Well, he was not afraid. Well, for the age, the first time in 200 years, he was not afraid. The continuity entered the Varath expanse 11 hours later. It moved through the dead systems silently. Invisibly, the enemy detected nothing. The quantum command network pulsed at the center of the expanse, coordinating its automated process, unaware that a ship it had never registered was approaching its heart. The continuity reached the Vanari core system, the homeworld, Tornal's homeworld, the planet where he had been born 354 years ago, the planet where the enemy had built its command node. From orbit, the damage was visible. The planet's surface had been transformed. Vanari cities had been dismantled. In their place, vast structures of alien design rose from the crust. Collection facilities, processing centers, the infrastructure of a system that had consumed a civilization. The weapon deployed. A single projectile, no larger than a communications satellite. It entered the atmosphere and descended toward the command node. The enemy did not react. It could not react. The projectile was designed to be undetectable until the moment of activation. A ghost within a ghost. The projectile reached the command node. It activated. A pulse of energy radiated outward from the impact point. Not destructive energy, disruptive, quantum-level disruption. It washed across the Varath expanse like a wave, touching every molecular displacement node in the network. 140,000 nodes deactivated simultaneously. Across 1,400 star systems, the inert forms of 2 trillion Vanari citizens flickered back to consciousness. In collection facilities, on disabled defense platforms, in processing centers, on the surface of their homeworld. 2 trillion people who had been frozen in stasis for decades woke up confused, disoriented, and alive. The enemy's collection units went inert. Across the expanse, the automated processes that had dismantled Venari civilization stopped. The machines that had taken the Venari's territory shut down. The system that had consumed 9,000 years of work ceased to function. The continuity broadcast a single message on all frequencies. This is the human vessel continuity. The threat in the Verath expanse has been neutralized. All captured Venari personnel have been released. Assistance is available for any civilization affected by this enemy. Transmit on this frequency if you require support. The message repeated, on a loop, across the expanse, into neighboring territories, into the Torathi Consortium, the Meridian Free States, the Kulthari Collective, the Sorani Imperium. Every civilization that had ignored the Venari distress call heard the human ship's message. Every civilization that had said, "Not our problem," learned that the problem had come for them anyway. Every civilization that had turned away from a dying species listened, as a single human ship announced that it had solved the problem alone. Tornal died 6 hours after the weapon activated. He died in the medical ward of the continuity. His last act was to record a message. It was not a will, not a farewell, not a eulogy for his species. It was a single statement addressed to no one and everyone. We called for 200 years. One ship answered, remember that, when the next call comes, when the next species cries out in the dark, remember that one ship answered, and ask yourself why you did not. The message was added to the continuity's archives, filed alongside the records of 43 other distress responses, 43 other species that had called, one ship that had answered. The Venari rebuilt. 2 trillion people returned from stasis faced the task of restoring 9,000 years of work. It would take generations, centuries, perhaps millennia, but they were alive, they were together, they had a future. And they had learned the lesson that 9,000 years of caution had never taught them. A connection was not weakness. Isolation was not strength. The only thing that mattered was that someone came when you called. Even if it took 200 years. Even if it was just one ship. Even if it was just 14,000 people on a scarred and ancient vessel that had been built for exactly this purpose. To hear, to come, to help. The continuity departed the Verath expanse 7 days after the weapon activation. It had resupplied. It had repaired. It had said goodbye to the Venari survivors who had gathered at the ship's departure point to watch it leave. No ceremony, no parade, no medals. Just a ship moving into the void, heading for the next empty space between civilizations, the next gap in the galaxy's attention, the next voice crying out in the dark. Because somewhere right now, a species was calling for help. And no one was listening. Except one ship. This is Apex Chronicle. The lighthouse never stops burning. We will see you in the next one.